Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. I'm Michael Nolan, and tonight we're going to talk about limousine warriors who used to be limousine heroes, and they've become nothing more than limousine zeros in my opinion. Now the whole video tonight was kind of inspired by a comment by one of our commenters, Joe Martucci, and he used the phrase limousine revolutionary as befitting to where John Lennon was at one point. And I do agree, for a short period of time, it seemed that Lennon was heading in that direction, but a bit of common sense ensued, and he historically basically avoided that. But you know, that doesn't mean that there weren't those who saw him as just that and followed suit. All right, so now by following suit, it seemed that like in the coming decades that anybody with a recording contract would look at Lennon as a person who spoke his mind, right? And they saw him as a pop star, a rock star who did so. But you know what? That's not all that John Lennon was. He was a spokesman for a generation. His mind worked in a bit different, higher gear than your average rock star. And I think it's a complete mistake to look at John Lennon and what he had to say about the world as coming from the lips of a rock star. He was a philosopher. He was a great thinker of the 20th century who happened to be a rock star. But every tomfoolery after him seemed to think that if they got a record contract, that they too were entitled to speak on world politics, where the world needs to go, and just how we're going to get there. Now, like I've said in the past, I don't mind this if a rock artist is writing a song or a piece that shows up on the album that espouses whatever belief systems they have. I only ask that once it's released, give it to the audience and let them make up their own damn minds about the piece. After that, I would prefer them to just shut their mouths and show up live and play their music. But what have we wound up with, really? We've wound up with people like Bono and Springsteen who use their venues to preach and to espouse their belief systems. Well, add one more to that pile, and of course, I'm sadly talking about a member of my third favorite classic rock band of all time, Pink Floyd, and of course, I'm talking about Roger Waters. Now, Roger Waters was interviewed by Chris Hedges, a self-proclaimed socialist and anarchist, on his show. And he discusses his brand new show on his tour, This Is Not a Drill. In the show, through use of visual aids, he espouses his personal belief systems. Of course, he believes the great enemies of the world are the great powers, the U.S. being only one. He's not a fan of Israel. He doesn't like the Supreme Court, and he thinks all presidents from Reagan to Biden are war criminals. Of course, he's against police brutality. Who isn't? And all of this is put up on the screen. Now, Roger Waters has spent the majority of his career playing stadiums far too small for his former band. But now he's on tours of about 16,000 in crowd. He's playing smaller venues. And after all of this occurs, the show culminates to a section that he calls the bar, a section that's named after a song he wrote during the pandemic period when he couldn't go on tour. And I guess the piece is about a fictional place, an analogous bar where people could meet and exchange different ideas, different ideologies, and not fear about talking about them. And of course, maybe, just maybe, if you were willing to listen, you might learn something. Not a bad idea, right? But you know, it's interesting here. When he gets to this part, he tells Chris that it's at this point in the show that he opens the entire 16,000 in attendance audience as the bar in general. But what do we have here? Again, 16,000 people. You know, he's selling to smaller crowds because his political views are very edgy. Basically, what he's doing is using the smaller crowds in my opinion, as recruitment centers. Think about it. Those smaller crowds are people who are, first of all, not offended by his politics, and for the majority might even agree with his politics. Certainly the ones who have not made up their minds and don't worry about politics, they just want to listen to great music. Those are the people he's trying to get a hold of. You know what, guys? This doesn't even sound like a rock concert to me. This sounds like a damn TED Talk. Now, I've been known to watch a few TED Talks and they're fine, but have you ever noticed in a TED Talk, almost everybody who's actually in that room are either converted or willing to be converted to whatever subject and personal opinions the speaker might have. He further goes on to say that he's clearly aware that he's not exactly the US government's favorite person, and yet every few years he has to update his visa or whatever it is these limousine rock stars have to update every few years so that he can live in this evil land we call the United States of America. Now, the last time he had to do this, he went in with his assistant. And of course, they had to take a number, and his number was just before his assistant. In other words, he was supposed to go in first, but they called his assistant in first. Now, when his assistant went in, he took care of it. They processed him immediately. He was in and out that quick. Then he noticed that they took another number after him, and another, and yet another. Now, his reasoning over this is that because of his belief systems and everything, he's finding it harder and harder to get past to be able to live in this country. Now, is this true, or is this just an artificial sense of self-importance? Let's go back to that assistant. You see, that assistant was applying for the same visa because he works for Roger Waters. Now remember, I said he went in, got processed, and got out of there immediately. His ability to be passed is based on working for Roger Waters. Now, that wouldn't be okayed unless Roger Waters was going to be okayed, all right? Now, I'm not saying there wasn't any federal employees that weren't unhappy with him. That, I guess, is a possibility, right? Maybe somebody in that office that day didn't like his politics and decided just to hold him up. I don't know. But this sense of self-importance, this sense and lack of reasoning over this whole situation is quite an eye-opener, if you ask me. Now, to tie all of this together, I want to get back to that main point that I brought up at the beginning of the video. The fact that John Lennon, who just so happened to be a world-class thinker, a world-class speaker, and a man of a certain amount of humility, especially when you consider the stratospheric levels this man inhabited, he was pretty modest. And you know what? There were times he opened his mouth too quickly, but he was always self-aware, and he always would correct his viewpoints in the next interview. But here's the whole tie-in. You see, Roger Waters goes on to tell Chris Hedges that he was so thankful that the Beatles were there to open the gateway for other artists to say their piece. You see what I mean? He fell for the bait. He thought that John Lennon was nothing more than a rock star, a general artist with a couple of ideas who opened up the floodgate for the same ilk. First of all, when he says this is a cut to John Lennon. And you know what? It's a mislabeling of John Lennon. John Lennon was a pop star, no doubt. One of the greatest rock stars to exist on planet Earth. Again, no doubt. But he was far more than that. And for any mere rock star to compare themselves to that man is an exercise in hubris, if you ask me. All right, so that's it for the video for tonight. I want to thank you all. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps the YouTube algorithm better identify the channel to a larger audience. I know. You've heard me say it before, and you'll hear me say it again because, guys, it's the truth. That does occur. And I want to thank you so much if you've given us a thumbs up. And for those of you who have shared my videos, a big thank you there. That's where the channel started to grow, was once people started doing that. The names you see in front of me, of course, are brand new subscribers, and I am a bit behind, as I've said before, but I will get to all of you. Now we're accepting new subscribers to be shouted out. We'll be accepting new subscribers long after that. But these kind of shout outs are going to be coming to an end, mainly because the job has gotten too big and I've gotten too far behind to continue shout outs as I have been doing them. But up to and including October 28th, 2022, folks, I will be making sure that anybody who has subscribed to the channel, that they will be getting their shout outs. I am keeping track. I'm crossing each one off the list as I get to them. And as I've said before, no freaking cuts, folks. All right, so if you haven't had a chance to subscribe to the channel as of yet, it's so easy. All you have to do is hit that subscribe to the tribe button, hit that top bell notification, and of course, you're going to be notified of all my future videos. All right, so that's it for the video tonight, but I do want to pose a question to the tribe tonight. Do you, I've asked this before, do you go to rock concerts to be preached to? Do you go to rock concerts to change your political ideologies? Or do you go to rock concerts to listen to music? Again, I'm not against people writing about their belief systems. Write it up. Create a piece of art around it. I'll take a look at it. I'll make my mind up on it. And that's what I think all of us do, isn't it? Now, if I'm wrong, let me know. Where is my logic insufficient on this matter? All right, so I'm Michael Nolan. This is The Bottom Line. We are the tribe, and I'll see you in my next video.